Good morning. My name is Allison Glasshauer, and I'll be reading the passage today found in the New Testament. We'll be reading chapter 4 in the book of John. I'm going to be reading verses 46 through 54. This is what we read. He went again to Cana of Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. There was a certain royal official whose son was ill at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea into Galilee, he went to him and pleaded with him to come down and heal his son, since he was about to die. Jesus told him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will not believe." "Sir," the official said to him, "come down before my boy dies." "Go," Jesus told him, "your son will live." The man believed what Jesus said to him and departed. While he was still going down, his servants met him, saying that his boy was alive. He asked them at what time he got better. "Yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him," they answered. The father realized this was the very hour at which Jesus had told him, "Your son will live." So he himself believed, along with his whole household. Now this was also the second sign Jesus performed after he came from Judea to Galilee.
Thanks, Allison. Well, good morning. My name is Brian. I'm one of the pastors here at GBC. I would love the chance to talk with any one of you today, whether that mean meeting you for the first time or taking the opportunity to find out what's going on in your life I can pray for, or talk with you about how our church would like to help you in your life. But I want to do that after we spend some time continuing a series we jumped into last week, where we're looking at 6 signs or miracles that Jesus did in the account of his life that we have written for us by his close friend and follower named John. And what I want to make sure that we are completely clear on today is the purpose behind the signs that we're going to look at. And it's vitally important for this reason. I grew up just being fascinated with and loving big cats like lions and tigers. I just did everything I could to find out as much as I could about them. I checked out books from the library, watched as many documentaries as I could. I watched as many videos about them as I could. In fact, at one point in my life, I wanted to be a zoologist because I just wanted to spend my time studying these animals and possibly caring for them. And as my obsession with big cats grew, there was one that rose to the top as my favorite, and it was the snow leopard. I've just found them to be beautiful. They were elusive creatures, and I will never forget the first time I watched a video of a snow leopard hunting its prey. This snow leopard did this. Like, it chased this goat thing and then falls off a cliff and bounces down the cliff, continuing to roll, and then gets up at the bottom and takes its prey with it. Like, I was just so infatuated with this animal that I started reading as much. Yeah, I know. Like, I'm telling you, awesome, right? So I read as much as I could about the snow leopard, watched as many videos of it falling down a cliff like this as I possibly could. I knew as much as I could, and everything changed the day I got to see one in person for the first time. I was at the Philadelphia Zoo, and I didn't know that they had a snow leopard in with their big cat exhibit. And so I remember rounding the corner, and right there, face to face with me, was a snow leopard. And it was more beautiful and captivating than I could have imagined. It was like all of those pictures and all of those videos couldn't do it justice. They were just kind of pointing to the beauty and the majesty that I got to experience when I stood in the presence of an actual snow leopard. And what it taught me that day is something that I think we all experience, and that is that no book or picture or AI-generated image can do justice to something that you experience in real life. Because it shows you that whatever that was actually exists. It shows you the actual beauty of that. But I think if we're not careful, we can wind up settling for the shadows that things like pictures and videos cast of things like that rather than the real thing. Like, imagine if I never took the opportunity to see a snow leopard live in person. Imagine that you were obsessed with something like the Grand Canyon. You spent a lot of time looking at pictures of the Grand Canyon, just loved the beauty of it, watched many videos of people hiking down into and up out of the Grand Canyon. You've got the Grand Canyon as the background on your phone, and someone comes to you and they say, "Hey, listen, I will send you to the Grand Canyon. I will fund your trip. I will set up your hikes down into and up out of it. I will get you the prime spot at every best viewing point that exists on the Grand Canyon." And you responded by saying, "Yeah, thanks, but no thanks." I mean, the pictures are good enough, the videos are good enough. I'd have to get someone to watch the kids. I'd have to ask off of work. Ain't nobody got time for stuff like that. I'm just going to settle for these shadows of the Grand Canyon rather than experiencing the real thing. And that's the danger that Jesus is trying to warn us against in our passage today. I want to remind you of something we looked at last week. It's in our passage again. In verse 54, it says, "Now this was also the second sign Jesus performed after he came from Judea to Galilee." John is naming the fact that what Jesus does in our passage is a sign. And this is the last time he's going to name it. The rest of the signs are for us to figure out. We'll talk more about that as we go along through our series. But this is a symbol. What Jesus does here is a shadow that is meant to point us to Him as the source that is casting the shadow, to tell us about who Jesus is and what He came into the world to do. And so what I want to do with you today is look at this sign and let's consider the danger of signs and wonders, the reliability of Jesus' word, and the source of life. Let's look at what this passage has to show us about the danger of signs and wonders, the reliability of Jesus' word, and the source of life. The context of our passage is really important to understand, especially when we try to consider Jesus' response to the royal official. If you look just one verse before what Allison read for us in verse 45, it tells us this. It says, "When they entered Galilee, the Galileans welcomed Jesus because they had seen everything He did in Jerusalem during the festival, for they also had gone to the festival." Now, earlier in John's account, we read about a time in John chapter 2, verses 13 through 25, where Jesus goes to the capital city of His people, named Jerusalem, to attend a festival called the Passover. And we're not sure what He did there, but apparently He did some more miracles. He did some more signs while He was in Jerusalem. And so when He comes to this region called Galilee, we're told that they welcomed Jesus, that they welcomed Him. And what's so important about that word translated welcomed is that it's the only time in John's gospel that that word appears in that form. And it's not the same word that John typically uses to talk about people accepting Jesus. He's telling us that they welcomed Jesus, not that they accepted Him for who He is, but they welcomed Him into their region because of the signs and the wonders that He had done. And so Jesus comes into Cana of Galilee. It's the same place where He turned water into wine that we looked at last week. And when He gets there, a guy living in Capernaum, all we know about him is that he's a royal official, hears that Jesus is there, and so he travels 20 miles from Capernaum to Cana to talk to Jesus, to ask Jesus for help because his son is sick. So sick that his son is on the brink of death. And there's something really important to understand about this son that we find in verse 49, where the official says, "Sir, come down before my boy dies." That word, translated boy, is a word in the original language that refers to someone who is not yet a teenager. They haven't yet hit puberty. Like, this is a young child who is sick and on the brink of death. And so the royal official travels to find Jesus in Cana to ask Him to heal his son. And it's in this context that we discover first the danger of signs and wonders. Look at how Jesus responds to the royal official's request to heal his son. Jesus told him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will not believe." Now, this is one of those moments where Jesus' response to someone doesn't quite make sense. It's a lot like what we looked at last week, where Jesus is at a wedding and they run out of wine and his mom comes to him and says, "Hey, they're out of wine." And Jesus says, "What does that have to do with me? It's not my time to die. I'm not ready to die yet." And this is the same kind of confusing response, which is why that context we talked about is so important, because it'll reveal to us what Jesus is trying to do here. Remember, Jesus is welcomed into Galilee not because of who He is, but because of what He's done, because of the miracles that He's done. This is going to be a huge theme as we continue our series. You're going to see this tension develop where Jesus keeps doing signs and wonders for people, and their response is to demand that He does more signs and wonders. One of the most pertinent examples I could show you is something that we're going to look at later in our series, where Jesus feeds over 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And after he feeds those over 5,000 people, he leaves and he gets on a boat and sails across the sea, and this crowd who he fed follows him. And when they find Jesus again, they have this wild conversation in John chapter 6. And in that conversation, this crowd that was fed by Jesus asks him this. They say, John chapter 6, verse 30, "What sign then are you going to do so that we may see and believe in you?" They asked. "What are you going to perform?" Now, if I'm Jesus and I just fed these people, like I'm going to look at them, what do you mean, what sign am I going to do? Like I just fed over 5,000 of you with a kid's Lunchable. What more of a sign do you need to believe? And yet you're going to see this thing happen over and over again in Jesus' ministry. And I think it helps us understand what he's doing here. Make no mistake about it, this is a rebuke from Jesus. Not just to the royal official, but to everyone in Galilee. Did you notice that? Like Jesus said to him, singular, "Unless you people, plural, see signs and wonders, you will not believe." The official is being put in the same larger group of the Galileans as people who refuse to believe in Jesus, they just want his stuff. The official, with all his sensibilities as a parent, sees Jesus as a means to accomplish his ends and his purposes in life. Jesus is rebuking a kind of belief, a kind of welcoming of him that is based in what he can do for us and to accomplish our purposes, instead of a belief in Jesus that is based on who he is, so that we do what he wants and accomplish his purposes in our lives. That's his point in saying that without a sign, they will never believe. Jesus sees the danger that comes with signs and wonders that would cause us to welcome him as some kind of genie or butler who exists to grant our wishes and meet our needs in life, rather than believing in him as the Son of God. In other words, I think what Jesus is showing us here is the proper motivation behind true biblical faith. He's asking us the question of what motivates our welcoming or our belief in Jesus. What motivates you today to believe in Jesus? Are you motivated by a God who's going to give you all of your hopes and dreams and what you want? Are you motivated by a God who's going to give you what brings you pleasure? Or are you motivated to believe in a God who is bigger than all of that, who gets to define what you need and set what brings you pleasure so that he can provide it in your life? The Galileans believed in Jesus. They welcomed him because of the wonders that he performed, rather than believing in him for the wonder that he is. That's the danger. We wind up worshiping the sign or wonder that God does, rather than the God to whom the sign points, who is the wonder in and of himself. To truly come to Jesus means to believe in him when there is no sign, there is no wonder, and even when it seems like he ignores a request. Which begs us to ask where each of us have placed our faith today. In what Jesus can do for us, or have we placed our faith in Jesus himself? Like the big question that I think this text is pressing on us today is, why have you welcomed Jesus into your life? Or why are you considering it? Because you might be in one of those two places. You might be someone who says, I've believed in Jesus, I've placed my faith in him, or maybe you're someone who's trying to figure it out, and the question you have to ask is, why? Why have you accepted him? Why do you want him in your life? Is it because of what you think he can do for you, what you can get out of him, or because he's the Son of God who loves you? This is so important, because there are so many of us, if we're not careful, who wind up loving other people and aligning ourselves with them simply because of what we can get out of them. In our sinful hearts and the fact that we live in a culture and a society that is discipling us to think that everything and everyone exists in order to benefit us, if we're not careful, we have a tendency to love someone or align ourselves with them simply because of what we can get out of them. Just think about it with me for a second. When you fall in love with someone, if you're honest with yourself, part of the reason you fall in love with them, at least initially, is because of the benefit they bring you. So maybe you fall in love with somebody because of their stunning good looks or their captivating beauty. And those stunning good looks and their, I don't know why you're laughing at your husband there. Sorry, squirrel moment. I didn't mean to call you out. That's on the internet forever too. This is great. You love them because they're beautiful. They're handsome. And that gives you a thrill. And deep down inside, you know that because of how stunning and captivating they are, that beauty gives you status in the eyes of other people, because you must be something special if someone that stunning is with you. Maybe you fall in love with somebody because they have a good work ethic. They're driven, which is an admirable character trait, yes, but deep down inside, part of the reason you love them for that is because you know that they'll give you stability moving forward. That in that drive and that hard work ethic, they're going to be able to provide for you. Maybe the reason that you love someone is because they wait on you hand and foot and they make your life better. And if we're not careful, we'll do the same thing when it comes to Jesus, where we'll welcome Him into our lives because we believe that Jesus is going to bring us safety and comfort. We'll welcome Him into our lives because we're expecting Jesus to make us wealthy and healthy. Or maybe we'll welcome Jesus into our lives because, He's going to get us out of hell. Now, I know I pressed on this a couple of times recently, but I haven't gotten an email yet. So let me do it one more time, and then I promise I'll leave it alone. I promise this is the last time I'll press on this for a while. But, think about it. So many people have welcomed Jesus into their lives because they've been told, if you don't welcome Jesus into your life, you're going to go to this place called hell that is immense suffering for all of eternity. But if you'll welcome Jesus, if you'll pray this little prayer, you won't have to go there. You'll get to go to the good place called heaven for all of eternity, where it's just pleasure and awesomeness forever. Think you mean, wait, I've got a choice between going to a bad place where I suffer forever for all of eternity, or I can go to this good place where I get to have pleasure for eternity. Sure, I'll pray that prayer. I'll take that. Do you realize the danger that exists there? That welcoming of Jesus is based on selfishness, on self-preservation and self-motives. It's not a love that's based on Jesus for who He is or what He's done. It's a love that's based on the benefit that it brings you. And the danger of welcoming Jesus because of what you can get out of Him is the same danger that exists in loving people for what you can get out of them. Because think about it. What if that person, no, not what if, when that person who you love for their stunning good looks or their captivating beauty, what happens when they get less stunning or less captivating? When they get older and they start to wrinkle and sag like every single one of us do, what happens? What happens when their work ethic goes away and they turn lazy? What happens when they used to make you laugh, or they were so romantic and all of a sudden they're not funny anymore and they couldn't care less about romance? What happens? Your love grows cold. And you wind up either existing in a miserable relationship or you walk away from the relationship completely. I'm telling you, I've seen this so many times in my ministry where I will sit with people who loved each other simply because of what they could get out of each other, and when the benefit is gone, the love is gone. And that's the same thing that'll happen to Jesus. If you love Jesus because of what you think you can get out of Him, because of the benefit you think that He will bring your life, when hard times hit, when suffering comes, that love will grow cold. And you will have the potential to walk away from the relationship. Your love for Jesus, like your love for other people, cannot be based on what you think you will get out of Him. Your love has to go deeper than that. You must worship Jesus for the wonder that He is, not the wonders that He can perform. Why are you following Him today? Have you welcomed Him into your life because of what He can do for you, because of what you think you can get out of Him? Or have you accepted Him because He is the true sign and wonder? To help us reflect on that, I want to take some time to look at the reliability of Jesus' word. You have to understand the difficulty that had to exist around this for the official. Like, he comes to Jesus and asks Jesus to heal his young son who was about to die, and Jesus responds with a rebuke. He doesn't even address his son. Like, he doesn't even respond to the man's request. But to his credit, like, the official is persistent. He says to Jesus in verse 49, "Sir, come down before my boy dies." Now let's pause for a second. Do you hear the desperation? Do you hear the heartbreak in the official over his son? He has no other option. Now look at how Jesus responds to him. I want to put this up next to this. I want you to see this. Verse 50, Jesus says, "Go, your son will live." That seems like a really good thing, doesn't it? Jesus has responded to the man's persistence, and He's going to heal him. But if you consider a little more deeply what's going on here, you'll see the difficulty that exists for the official. This is actually a huge test. Just look at the text. The official, both in verse 47 and in verse 49, says, "Come down with me. Come down with me to Capernaum so that you can heal my son." That's significant because it was believed in Jesus' day that in order for a healer to heal, you had to be present in the room. Like for miracle workers in Jesus' day, there were a lot of them, by the way. Jesus wasn't the only one walking around doing stuff like this. But in order for a magician or a healer or any miracle worker to do their thing, they had to be present. They had to be in the room. And so the official, based on all that he knows, asks Jesus to come heal his son on his terms. "Come down with me to heal my son." And Jesus refuses. He responds to the official's request to come down and heal his dying son by saying, "Go, your son will live." Do you notice the difference? Jesus is willing to heal the official's son, but this is a test of the official's faith. This is a test of his belief in Jesus. Is he welcoming Jesus or accepting Jesus? Like, Jesus could have made this so much easier. He could have just walked the 20 miles back to Capernaum with this official, comforting him along the way, telling him that his son's going to be fine, and then walking into the room and declaring him healed, and all would have been good. And yet he refuses. He refuses to journey with the man. Jesus is asking him, "Do you trust me enough to believe what I say? That my word is sufficient? Do you believe in me enough to let me heal your son on my terms, not yours?" Can you imagine what that would have required of the official? He would have had to travel the 20 miles back to Capernaum by himself, agonizing over the state of his son, wondering whether or not Jesus' word was going to come true. Do you see the test that Jesus is giving the official here? He's asking something difficult. Does the official believe in Jesus or in the signs and wonders of Jesus? And look at the official's response. The man believed what Jesus said to him and departed. He believes what Jesus says. He doesn't try to force Jesus to do anything. He doesn't try to force Jesus to come with him. He simply trusts that Jesus is who He is. And he goes away believing that his son will be healed. And what makes that so insane is the context I mentioned to you a second ago. If you were going to heal someone, you had to be present in the room. In order for the official to trust Jesus here, he has to believe that that Jesus is a healer unlike any other healer, because the only one who can heal with just a word from a distance is God. No one else has that kind of power. No one else can speak things into existence and have them be other than God himself. In other words, what the official had to do was he had to trust the word of the word. You tracking with me? Like, I put it on the screen so you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be clever here. He had to trust the word, lowercase w, of the word, capital W. Now, the reason I put that way is because in that little phrase where it says that he believed what Jesus said and departed, that word that's translated said there, if you read that literally in the original language, it says that the man believed the word that Jesus said to him and departed. And that word in the original language, I hope you're tracking with me, I'm saying the word a lot. But that word in the original language that's translated said or translated word in a lot of places is the exact same word that John uses to refer to Jesus in the beginning of his gospel, where right off the bat he says this, "In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created through Him, and apart from Him, not one thing was created that has been created." Even though the official wanted a sign from Jesus, the only thing he got was Jesus' word. No song and dance, no show. Just the word of the Word. And the official believed him. He trusted in who Jesus is and what Jesus said that he would do. This is the call on our lives today. To trust the word of the Word. Do you believe that? Do you believe that Jesus is who he says he is? Do you believe he will do what he says he is going to do without needing to prove himself to you over and over again? What might create that kind of faith in us? A faith that trusts Jesus at his word without having to prove himself over and over again. I think what might create that in us is if we see that Jesus has given us the sign to end all signs that the royal official, didn't have the benefit of. Something really interesting happens in our passage. It's very easy to miss, but it's really cool once you see it. Look with me at verses 51 through 53. While he was still going down, his servants met him, saying that his boy was alive. He asked them at what time he got better. Yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him. They answered. The father realized this was the very hour at which Jesus had told him, "Your son will live." So he himself believed along with his whole household. So again, imagine being the official. You ask Jesus to come with you and heal your son. Jesus says, "Nope, go. He's healed." And so you leave. And you're beginning to travel home. You are a day into your travel. You notice that? The servants gave him news the next day. So you're a day into your travel, just like, I trusted this guy's word. I'm believing in him. I'm hoping that my son's going to be healed. But before you can get home, some of the people who work in your house come running up to you and say, "Hey, your boy's better. The fever left him. He's not going to die anymore." And then the official asks, "When did that happen?" About yesterday, 1 p.m, the exact time that Jesus told you that it was going to happen. And notice what it says. It says that the official believed again. Like, this is the second time he believed. He's going deeper into his belief in Jesus. You've got to understand, this is not a critique of the failing faith that every single person who tries to follow Jesus experiences in their lives. This is a critique of placing faith in inappropriate objects. The belief that will get you to the heart of Christianity is one that is rooted firmly in the person and work of Jesus, is rooted in the fact that Jesus is a son himself who provides healing for all his brothers and sisters. Here's the easy thing to miss that I mentioned in our passage. All throughout it, the royal official is referred to as just that. That's his title. He's the other main character besides Jesus. He's called the royal official and he's called the official just numerous times until you hit verse 50 when he believed, and he's called the man. And then in verse 53, did you notice what he's called? The Father. There's a changing of his title. There's actually a softening of it where it goes from royal official / official to the man And then in verse 53, it calls him the Father. And I think that's being done to imply to us that this man is being met not in his official capacity, but in his familial capacity. And that softening is meant to point us to the true royal official present in this story in Jesus, who has come from God the Father. And the reason he's able to heal as the Son of God is because he would not spare himself. He's able to bring life because he himself would experience death. You can see this stated very plainly in a lightning rod of a passage that's in Matthew chapter 12, verses 28 through 40, which reads this: "Then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to him, 'Teacher, we want to see a sign from you.' Do you hear it? Dance, Jesus. Perform for us." Now listen to how Jesus responds. "An evil and adulterous generation demands a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was in the belly of the huge fish 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights." Jesus is referencing clearly here what's implied in our text. We need no greater sign than what he has done for us in his death and resurrection. The sign of Jesus healing the official son points us to the fact that he's the Son who would die on our behalf so that we could live. This healing serves to point us to another Father, God the Father, who would lose his Son to the clutches of death so that more of his sons and daughters could be brought into the family of God through belief in Jesus. This is a reminder for us that Jesus is not only the creator of life, but he came to restore life. When having been dead in the grave since Good Friday, he got up and rose from the dead on Easter Sunday morning. Jesus is the life. He is life in and of himself, and so all life must be located in his person and work. You can trust and believe on Jesus simply because of who he is and what he has already done for us through his life, death, resurrection, and ascension. The official didn't have the benefit of that, and yet he believed in Jesus anyway. You and I are at an advantage because we can look back on the sign to end all signs, the wonder to end all wonders of Jesus' death and resurrection as the only motivation we need to trust the word of the Word. So here's where I think the rubber really meets the road when it comes to what we're talking about today. One thing this story teaches us is that faith is tested, formed, and proven in the furnace when things get tough. And when suffering comes into your life, that's when you learn why you really love Jesus. Why you're in it with him when it comes to life. And suffering has the opportunity to not only prove your faith to be what it is, it has the opportunity to shape and form your faith into what it should be if you will let it, which is why I just want to give you 3 real quick practical applications that you can take home with you today from this passage. And they're simply this. When you find yourself in trouble, first of all, like when you find yourself in trouble, when you find yourself suffering, when you have a problem, go to Jesus. Go to Jesus. He wants you to. He wants you to come to him. He wants you to confide in him. He wants you to beg and plead with him. And so whenever you have a problem, whenever you have any kind of suffering or difficulty in your life, go to Jesus. And second, when you go to Jesus, let him answer you on his terms. Because there's a lot of times, especially when we're in trouble, when we're having a problem, that we go to Jesus in order to ask him for help, and we've already got planned out how we want him to help us. You tracking with me? Like, Jesus, I want your help, and here's A, B, and C that I want you to do in order to help me. You realize how closed-handed that is? It's like, Jesus, I'm going to define how you're going to help me here. What I'm trying to tell you is, go to Jesus when you need help with open hands. Like, go to him saying, Jesus, I need your help. Be nice if you helped me this way, but I'm open to whatever you want to do here to answer this because I know that you know better. Like anytime I think about this, I always wind up going back to the Garden at Gethsemane, where the night before Jesus dies, he does just this. he's in trouble, he's having problems, he's suffering more than we can possibly imagine, and so he goes to God the Father for help. And he tells God the Father what he wants. He says, like, if there's any other way that we can do this, like if there's any way out of this, then let's do it. But how does his prayer end? Not my will, but yours be done. He lets the Father answer his prayer on the Father's terms, not his. And so the next time you find yourself in trouble, go to Jesus, but let him answer you, your request, whatever it is you're bringing to him, on his terms, knowing that he knows better, he knows the best way to answer you, even if you don't get it. And when he comes through, when he shows up, when he helps, because I promise you, he will. Even if you don't understand it, even if it doesn't make sense at first, he will show up. And so when he helps you, the third thing that you need to do is tell others about it. Do you notice in our passage that it wasn't just the royal official who believed? It was his whole household. Why? Because he told them about what Jesus did. And so when you experience that, when you experience the power and the love of God working in your life, tell other people about it. Tell your family. Tell your friends. Nothing that God ever does for us in our lives is supposed to terminate on ourselves. It's supposed to be used as a way that we can bless and encourage others while glorifying God's name and making him great to all the nations. And so the next time you're in trouble, the next time you find yourself in a place similar to this royal official, go to Jesus. Let him answer you on his terms. And when he shows up, tell others the good news of what he's done for you. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the encouragement of this passage. Thank you for the fact that you're willing to rebuke us when we need rebuked. Thank you for the fact that even in your rebuke there is love and kindness and an assurance of showing up and meeting us where we're at. And so I pray that we would take heart in that. I pray that you would reveal to each one of us today, Holy Spirit, our motivations for welcoming you. Would you show us where those motivations are selfish, where we are believing in you and wanting you in our lives simply because of your benefit and what you can give us? Would you help us to move into a faith and a belief in you that is pure, that is deeper than the benefits that you bring into our lives, that believes in you and wants you because of who you are and what you've done for us? May we be captivated by your beauty today in a way that we never have before. I also ask that for any of us that are having problems, that are facing struggles, Lord, would you bring us to your feet? Would you help us to recognize that you are there to help us in our time of need, that you will show up? And would you help us to come to you with open hearts and open minds, willing to let you answer our requests however you see fit? We recognize how easy it can be for us to come to you with a list of demands of how we need your help and what we want you to do. May we stop all of those negotiations like we sang earlier today and trust who you are. Trust your word. And give us the motivation to share the good news of all of that with those around us. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.